Welcome to another episode of Tanstwocents. Today's episode is Disrupt the Game, what smart GovCon leaders are doing now. I'm your host, Tanwilson, and joining me here today is Ron Jones, the CEO of G2 Exchange, a platform that is fundamentally changing how we track, compete, and win in the GovCon space. We're removing the curtain on what's happening in the market regarding the old rules. They don't work anymore. And we're talking about the disruption already in play, the firms quietly dominating behind the scenes, and what you need to do to stay relevant and to win. So, Ron leads one of the most influential platforms in government contracting, known for delivering real time industry intelligence, business development insights, and community driven content that helps GovCon professionals and companies stay ahead of the curve. And under his leadership, G2 Exchange has become a trusted hub for opportunity tracking, federal health updates, and collaborative intelligence. All of this is designed to fuel smarter decisions and faster action. And with a deep background in strategic growth and a firm finger on the pulse of the federal market shift, Ron doesn't just report on change, he helps the industry make sense of all of it. So, Ron, welcome. And finally, a guest on Ton's Two Cents podcast. Say hello to our intellectuals.
Yes, finally.
I know, right? And for those who don't know
Finally,
you,
it's been over a year, right? It's been a year since since over a year since you started this. So I'm finally, here. I'm happy to be here. Appreciate you having me. And to all the intellectuals tuning in, it's great to connect with you and Ton with you as well. It's been a long time coming.
it really has, and it's been a wonderful journey. And I want to say that when I started my podcast, you and Alexa were like, "We're behind you," and so you are the OG
Right.
of Tons Two Cents, podcast sponsors and supporters. And we will flash up a code here. So we do have a special code and a discount for our intellectuals. We'll put this up again here during our episode, but for those who don't know you, don't know your background, I love the fact
Yeah.
that you're a techie and you still do programming and coding and like cool things like that.
Yeah. So I've got an interesting path, right? I mean, I can take it way, way, way back. I think my first summer job was for a NASA, summer program for high school students to get exposure to robotics, programming, things like that. So I probably shouldn't have even been able to do this job. I think I was too young, but I was a teacher's assistant for the summer program, teaching the basics of computer programming. We used a little tool called Corel, where
I
give
remember.
instruct. You basically create basic algorithms. You know Corel? Okay, so
I've heard of it.
you tell a
Listen,
robot
yeah.
how to go. Okay. Well, you basically tell a robot to go around the grid and pick up little beepers, and that was a lot of fun. And I got to do a lot of robotic building and all types of stuff. But being able to help teach those classes to high school students much older than I was kind of my first summer job. Moving on, I wanted to get into politics. And went off to college and thought that's what I was going to do. And I spent some time interning for Congressman John Lewis at his DC office, which was a lot of fun. But at some point, a light switch flipped rather, and I thought I should be more pragmatic and just do what I'm good at. Focus on what I have a higher chance of executing on successfully, and went into software development. So had an opportunity to work as a contractor at Department of Education. This is a long time ago, and that was my very first job. I was doing cold fusion. Some of the intellectuals in the community may understand, or know what that is. Scripting language, and that was a pretty fun job. Moved on to, and as a matter of fact, before we move on from that, we can talk about sudden change in relation to that job a little bit later. But moved on to an opportunity at the Treasury Department, specifically SIGTARP, the Special Inspector General for the Troubled Asset Relief Program. helping out with their case management and evidence gathering system. That was really rewarding. And then finally, moved on to a global consultancy. And what we did there, what I did there was primarily defense and state, local, and law enforcement contracting. Spent many years there, cut my teeth on technical sales, and
Mhm.
eventually moved into more of a growth function over time. From there, I went to a company called Blue Prism, global RPA providers. Some of your
Yep.
audience may know who they are. Did some good work in federal, again, defense and civilian, but also state, local. Did some work in the Canadian federal government. Also interfaced with the team over in the UK that was doing some work for National Health Service over there. From there, went to IBM Federal, working on their data platforms unit, and that incredible team. I think if they're here, if they hear this, this is one of my favorite teams I've ever had the opportunity of working with at IBM Federal, and from there was recruited to come on board and turn this,
Yeah.
turn G2X into its full potential.
Yeah. No, and
So long history of technical and growth related roles.
exactly. And I think this is why I've always kind of enjoyed our conversations because you have there are people in our industry where you have conversations with them and it never diverges from a specific topic, right? But every time you and I talk, it's always about like random topics that kind of come up
Yeah.
in the normal span of conversations. And so kind of like your path to where we are right now is I'm actually a trained chemist. I have a degree in chemistry and political science.
I did not know that. So what's funny? My mom is a chemist.
Yeah, and
I did not know that.
all smart women are chemists. And so like we kind of go in this, like random zigzaggy type of, path to GovCon. And so yeah, so I came to DC to manage a HUD contract. Which is, because of my chemistry degree and things like that. And that's kind of, like why I do what I do now. But
Right, right.
politics wise too, I ran for state house. I used to run political campaigns when I was in my like early mid 20s. And so like that love for politics and policy and governance, I think is,
And we've had these
yes.
conversations. I mean, so I think you did say you were going to help me when I decided to run, right?
I'm gonna have
Wink,
to
wink.
run first. So like, yeah, so I'll help you, you help me, even though I think we're on the two different ends of the political spectrum, but that's okay. Um, we will cross the aisle. Um, but yeah, I think it's always really kind of interesting. But the one last thing I will say about your technical background is that when I was in college, I needed an extra credit before I graduated. And someone was like, "Oh, you should take C program. Oh, come take this class with me at C programming." Okay. And I was like,
Hmm.
"Oh, I can take C programming. Sure." I was not a computer major, by the way. So I took the C programming class and I got to the class and Dr. Farabella, I remember him like it was yesterday. He goes, Ton, I think you're in the wrong class, and I will not like I will not think less of you if you like if you consider opting out or just auditing my class. And I go, what do you mean? I'm like, C
Right,
programming.
right.
It was C plus programming. I was like, this is computer plus programming.
Hmm.
So no, C does not stand for computer programming. C
C does not stand for it. Right. So how'd the class turn out? How did it all
uh,
work out?
it kicked my ass, but can I tell you, it made
Yeah.
sense. And so I'm so much better for it. Like I was glad, and he was actually the one who presented me my colors during baccalaureate. So I was like, he made such an
Oh man.
indelible impression. I was like,
Yeah.
no, you got to do this. Um,
Yeah. I mean, it's the beauty of algorithmic thinking. I think it helps in so many arenas. It's a really important foundational concept that I think all people should have some exposure to.
yeah, Yeah, exactly. I think it's a great basic class. So, um, oh my God, you and I are gonna have to like really watch our time here because we could just kind of have conversations like this forever. But before we dive into like the details of everything, I want to have like a really fun question for you because, changing
Okay.
GovCon, I think I'm a big movie fan, and so I think sometimes it could be a scene from like a TV drama, reality TV show, or a Marvel movie. And so like when significant shifts like the one we're experiencing now like hits, funding changes, leadership shakeups, people getting fired, hired, like whatever. Are you a like Olivia Pope from Scandal who's like quietly fixing things behind the scenes, with this calm, calculated plan? Or are you more like one of my favorite characters, like Tony Stark, right? Like Iron Man, building solutions in real time, and
You know,
like the end of the world is about to happen. Like, which one are you?
I would definitely say I'm a Tony Stark. If there was one, I mean, he's obviously a lot more in a lot more glamorous, realm, than we are, but and doing fun stuff with actual hard technology, which is more fun than software, in my opinion. I would say, I do a lot behind the scenes. I'm not as out in the open as my counterpart and partner, Alexa, Alexa Choi. She's definitely more the Olivia Pope though,
Yeah,
but she's front and center. She's not. There's not much behind the scenes about Alexa. I mean,
she's all
she
out
comes
there.
in and gets things done.
Yeah,
And she's out there, and she's amazing at that. And we are complete opposites in that sense. I'm very much, an introvert. If you subscribe to Myers Briggs, the MBTI, I'm an INTJ, and I can confirm that. I'm confident in that as many times as I've taken the MBTI in my professional career. So, and I think she's the exact
I'm an
opposite.
ESTJ,
So
so yeah, I'm your opposite.
okay, so that makes it.
Yeah,
So that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So definitely Tony Stark. I mean, if, for example, right now, I have three different iterations or three different windows of my IDE open, integrated development environment, and I'm working on a few different, internal tools. So I do a lot of our internal tooling to help support our engineering team, and I do, a few. I do contribute to a few externally facing projects, but primarily internal tooling. And I'm building this stuff, and now with the advent of AI too, which has
yeah,
been I haven't developed in years as a job, right? But with the advent of AI and the pace at which it's exploding and evolving, I'm able to get so much
hmm,
done in a week's time, in a day's
yep,
time. I mean, it's incredible the force multiplier that it is, or that it's become, and that is still, growing to become. As a matter of fact, Google just released a new model called Gemini 2.5. And Gemini's been out for a while, but 2.5 Pro, and you know, if anybody's listening, I recommend interfacing with that model, trying it out. It is the absolute best model, in my opinion, out there to
wow,
do technical tasks. So math, coding, it's incredibly good. And these things keep getting better
yep,
and better and better. And like I said, more rapidly. So definitely Tony Stark. I build a lot of stuff, and sometimes my engineering team doesn't like that. So I try not to be too disruptive, but
yeah,
I've been a tinkerer, my whole life, and it's not just coding. I actually build a lot of stuff in the real world, and like I won't get into it, but like carpentry, and you've got you know Legos. I mean, I got a lot. I got a ton of hobbies. So yeah, that was a long-winded way of answering the question,
Tony
but
Stark.
yeah,
Okay.
definitely Tony Stark.
Yeah.
Tony Stark.
No, I have the spirit of Tony Stark, but I am Olivia Pope through and through. It's like I like being the puppet
Hmm.
master behind things. I like influencing things. I love kind of being in the know of everything. So yeah, that's why you get those, like random
Yeah.
11 p.m. like messages from me like, "Hey, can you do can we like yeah, we'll talk about that here." Um
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I find it endearing though, because it's good to know that somebody else is out there working as late as I do on a consistent
Uh,
basis. So I love to see it.
yeah, no, I don't sleep. So let's just
Yeah.
let's just dive in because I think you've kind of alluded to some of the points that we're going to make here in this episode. And the first segment is about disruption, right? Like it has like winter is here, disruption is here, and we've
Yeah.
talked. We've always talked about change, like it's looming, but like in reality, it's real. And I think typically like the traditional rules of GovCon, the relationships, long capture, even how traditionally, business development intel is sourced, it's shifted. So AI technologies,
Right.
this new administration has really kind of turned the whole, like the whole industry kind of on its head a little bit. So let's talk about, platforms like G2X. And there's a lot of copycatters out there. We're not going to throw any shade or any names, like out there to protect the innocent and the guilty. But, you've really, since taking on G2X, you and Alexa have kind of rewritten the playbook about how GovCon professionals track, engage, and win in real time.
Yeah, I mean, so first off, appreciate the kind words. We've worked really hard to, just add value. You hear me say this all the time. It's about, adding value, leading with value. And, the way we do that, it's not like, oh, I think technology has never been more of a commodity than it is today.
Mhm.
And I say this about software all the time. The things that matter most today are distribution and taste. What I mean by distribution is community.
Okay.
We've built community. We're out there, we engage, we work very hard to, maintain and develop customer intimacy so that we're responsive to their needs. We're not venture capital funded. So, we're customer funded. So we answer to our customers, not, not our investors. And taste, right? I think good software, good products are opinionated. We have a viewpoint, and it's reflected in our brand language. It's reflected in the way that we, prioritize new features, the way our features work in the platform, and the way that we engage in real life, right? So we're not just a software platform. It's really a go to market accelerator for federal contractors. We do educational events, we do networking events. We're not a media company, but it's important to have that community, like I said. And those two things, that distribution and taste, I think, are what has helped us succeed in this environment, right? Especially when there are so many participants in the
Yeah.
arena. And the thing, and I think there's room, for folks. There's room for everybody. But I do think that, traditionally, this industry, of the vertical SaaS players in this industry, have had a heavy focus, maybe over-indexed on data, more data, more
Yeah.
data. And I think what is more important is context. How do you empower? How do you activate your users to be able to use the data that they're being presented to actually win, to do something? It's got to be actionable. It's not market intelligence until it has context.
Hmm.
And I think about our friend Guy Timberlake, and he's a mentor of mine, and I really respect um, uh, his knowledge, vast knowledge of the industry, and I've learned a lot from it. He talks about context all the time, and I think it's critically important for folks that have access to tools, whatever tool you use, even the publicly available ones, FPDS, USA Spending, whatever the case may be. You got to understand how to use that data. And so, we bring those things together: data, context, and opportunity.
Hmm.
Making sure that people get in front of the right people that can lead to lead to new deals. And we package that all together, and it's been successful so far. We're growing, and we just continue to try to find new ways to enrich the customer base, and even those that we don't directly serve. We still try to get people in the tent and give them something they can use.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I think, you know, my last parting thought about that, because, we could turn this entire episode into a G2X, type of promo, but
Yeah,
there's
but that's not
that's
why we're
not
here.
why
We
we're
know
here. But
that.
I think at the end of the day, your approach is exactly like how any government contractor or anyone who is selling a service or a product to maybe the end customer or the government or whatever is to understand from a end user perspective, what is it that they value, and like you said, you use the term context, but yeah, it's like, well, like I get very overwhelmed by data. I need the data to be carefully kind of aggregated and presented to me. And sometimes I don't even know why certain data is important until you reframe it and present it in a way like, hey, did you know that you could use this data or this information, or we've created a dashboard or we've created a report to kind of present that. And it's just that whole power of suggestion, the power, like, I think that's very powerful. That kind of sets everybody kind of apart because, like you said, this is such a large market. There is room for everybody. And I think that there are different tools out there that are good for different, like different purposes. And so it's just something that everyone kind of needs to evaluate for themselves. And your needs evolve and they kind of change as your company matures,
That's right.
and things like that. So you may use, like your company or your tool for one purpose, and then maybe use another one another time for another opportunity, just because it's a better fit.